They didn't just cut the scene, they cut the infrastructure. That's the difference between an adaptation that works and one that slowly falls apart. Adapting a book to screen or animation to live action can be hard, and many have tried with mixed outcomes. It's something that is becoming way too frequent, considering there are so many other books that could be adapted or another idea. Animation can be hard to translate into live action for a variety of reasons. As much as you may want to see it in live action, it sometimes just doesn't work, so you should just stick to the animation. Action in animation allows the characters to move faster, take more damage, and be more flexible. Real humans have a limit to how much they can do, so a lot of the time it feels like they are slowed down, and if the character has a special ability, the CGI often just doesn't hold up. Avatar The Last Airbender is a perfect example because the fights in the animation are intense and fast paced, and it doesn't translate well in any of the live action adaptations. Some of the animation is good, but it's very similar or even the same as the original. How to Train Your Dragon's live action remake is pretty much the same story, which makes the movie good, but some of the comedy really didn't transfer over. While it's a good movie, it makes me ask what's the purpose of creating the same story when you can just watch the animated one? If you were to change things, you need to make sure you understand why those things exist in the first place, because sometimes a small change has a massive set of consequences that will affect the future of the show or movie down the line. With book and animated to live action adaptations, changes are sometimes made that aim to make the story better, but the person adapting doesn't realize how it affects the big picture. Removing or relocating elements that seem minor when you isolate them but are load bearing in the long run seems like something that happens frequently. They just don't cut the scene, they also cut the infrastructure. The Harry Potter films are great, but the removal of Winky from the earlier films messed up the potential to incorporate house elves even more and include the storyline about their uprising. It's an interesting story about an oppressed group fighting back and finding their voice with the help of Hermione. It's a great message to include, but it's a steady build up in the books, and it being cut so early would have made it hard to just add in later amongst the other storylines happening. These storylines are important because it reminds people of things that mirror real life, and in this instance, it's a reiteration that slavery is bad and you can break free from your oppressors, but it won't be easy. In the live action Avatar The Last Airbender show, they pivot from the animated and introduce Avatar Kyoshi before Roku. This actually felt like fan service because people do really like, Kyoshi and want to learn more about her. But this isn't the way. The Avatar has a cycle, and the previous Avatar is who is their spiritual guide through their journey, considering they are the most spiritually connected, so it would be Roku for Aang, not Kyoshi. Furthermore, Roku's story connects Zuko and Aang a bit more in the later seasons when you get an understanding of what happened to Roku. Working with the last Avatar helps give a better perspective for the current Avatar of the mess that they have stepped into and need to help fix. The live action remake did the same thing by introducing the Painted Lady early. The significance of the Painted Lady in season 3 of the animated show is that she is a spirit that was tied to a village in the Fire Nation, not a general myth that everyone would just know about. Some people think the episode is a filler episode, but it's an episode that helps the viewer understand that the Fire Nation is harming, possibly killing its own people to fuel its war. So the Fire Lord has to be stopped. Doing these things differently just leaves more questions when the original did it perfectly fine. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, was a fun movie when I was younger, but now I see how some of the changes doomed the franchise. Ares is the underlying baddie in the first book, and they, for some reason, cut him out completely. His story ties back into the greater theme of the novels, which is Kronos trying to manipulate the gods and demigods to get released. The film fails to introduce Clarice and Thalia in the first movie, so by the time we get to Sea of Monsters, they are introducing characters that should have been in the first movie, while introducing the characters in the second movie, and doing this journey, and it just gets all very messy. The leads are kids of God, so they share traits, and they forget this as well because Annabeth, the daughter of Athena, has very little of that wisdom and strategy that her mother is known for, and it seems like they just gave all of that, godly powers that she had to Percy when there was a reason for all of them to be on this journey, and that was hers. Sometimes we see these live action remakes removing things that made the film so loved. Disney seems to make changes that make me scratch my head in their adaptations. Like in the live action Mulan, they take out the singing and the comedic aspects of Mushu. The movie is a shell of a movie compared to the animated one. Sometimes it feels like they look at the movie and take out the biggest part of the film that people loved. Cutting the wrong thing is one problem, but some adaptations have the opposite disease. They can't stop adding. This can really make the story feel drawn out and mess up the flow of the story. The Hobbit is the first thing that comes to mind because the book is fantastic. A great intro to the world of Tolkien that he created, and it's not a massive book in terms of pages. To put it into perspective, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, the first book in the Lord of the Rings series, is like double the size of The Hobbit. So the question is, why are there 3 movies based on one book? I would say money, but it seems like they wanted to mimic the success of The Lord of the Rings. And, The Lord of the Rings, though, is 3 books. So it makes sense why there are 3 movies. They add in so much stuff that is not in the book, mainly the constant addition of orcs in The Hobbit, which takes away from the main story and is really disappointing considering the book itself is very good. The Summer I Turned Pretty is not an amazing book, but it's an easy read with a decent love triangle. The books are mainly Belly, Jeremiah, and Conrad at Cousin's Beach as Belly navigates which brother she wants. Most of the characters in the show make appearances, but the roles aren't that big. In the show, they added so much so they can have 8-episode seasons, and it loses the best part of the book, which was how secluded the story felt. This book isn't amazing, but the show somehow made it even worse. Now, on the flip side, sometimes adaptations add things and it just makes it better. Sometimes something is just missing from the story and then they will get adapted and they find that missing piece and make sure to add it in. The Jungle Book comes to mind because the 60s animated version is very short and leaves out the wolf storyline, which if you read the book, you know that that is who raised Mowgli. The live action one by Disney included the whole story, and it was great to see it all made it into the movie and helped make the movie more cohesive. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was adapted from a book to animation and then they made it into live action. The animated special is great to watch around Christmas, but it leaves me wanting more due to the very short runtime. How the Grinch Stole Christmas starring Jim Carrey is an expansion on the story, much funnier and heartwarming. It expands on the Grinch's lore and made me feel more invested in the characters. Some that aren't adaptations per se, but the villain-fronted stories that are expansions of the animated film, like Maleficent or Cruella. They offer a new perspective on the character you thought you knew and offer a different point of view that makes you question how they were presented in other films. These are great to me because it's all about context and who's telling the story. Sometimes there are adaptations that come along and truly knock it out of the park. These make you breathe a sigh of relief because the director did such a great job. Dune is not an easy read. Besides the fact that it's introducing you to a new world, there are new words, you are learning about universal politics, there are time jumps, and just so many characters from different backgrounds. So basically, it can get a little confusing. The Dune films directed by Denis Villeneuve make the content easy to digest, and splitting it up into two films really helps the viewer get a good foundation on how everything operates. Obviously, the amazing cast also helps. This might be a controversial one, but The Haunting of Hill House is a fantastic show and what I think is to be the best horror series. If you read the book, you know how different it is because they kept the same name of the house and the names of the characters, but everything else is different. The book and the show are vastly different, but I think it works because it had me more invested in the family dynamic. With the show going from the past to the present day, it brought up questions about the house and their mom. The ghosts are terrifying, and a cool Easter egg is that there are some ghosts that are just in scenes that aren't scaring you, but they're just chilling in the background, which is a great detail to further push the narrative that the house is haunted. Whether you are being scared at night or not, the ghosts are just there all the time. Some adaptations change the characteristics of characters and makes them more likable, which just translates better on screen when you want someone to like them. The Hunger Games makes Katniss more likable in the films. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate her in the books, but she is super paranoid sometimes and it gets annoying because people are trying to help and she is just not being a team player. In the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series of movies, they did something similar by making Peter more likable. In all the books, I rooted for whoever the other guy was that was trying to get Laura Jean, but in the movies, they made him more likable, so you rooted for him and Laura Jean to be in game. These minor changes help the story seem more believable, and we all love a character we can root for. One of my favorite directors, Guillermo del Toro, said that animation is not a genre for kids, it's a medium. Animation has the same range as live action films, maybe more. We make live action adaptations of animated films like animation is a lesser format when it is not. Like, remember those fight scenes we talked about earlier from Avatar? That's not a failure of live action. That's animation doing something live action was never going to be able to match. Instead of honoring the magnificence in animation, we keep trying to replicate it. Animation is not a limitation. If anything, it allows for more creativity, more range, and an opportunity to do cooler things. The best adaptations don't just rebuild the structure, they understand why it was built that way in the first place. They shouldn't stop making remakes completely, but there should definitely be fewer because some don't have a good reason to be remade, especially if the original is great. When it comes to adapting from book to screen, there needs to be more thought and passion so you don't add or remove content that will degrade the quality of a film that's based on a book that so many love. The good ones ask what makes this story worth telling, while the bad ones just want to make more money or take a small, simple story and try to make it into a franchise. One option you could always explore is to invest in new ideas and really give us some new stories. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please do so and keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.